I spent 24 hours cooking for my son's party only to hear him joke, "We'll feed it to the dogs." The first thing that burned wasn't my hand. It was my chest. I was standing in my own kitchen, still wearing an apron dusted with flour, when my son laughed and said it, loud enough for everyone to hear, casual enough to pretend it didn't matter. "We'll feed it to the dogs." The room erupted in chuckles. Someone clinked a glass, someone else snapped a photo for social media. And just like that, 24 hours of love, labor, and quiet sacrifice were reduced to a punchline. I smiled. I always smiled. But something inside me finally went silent. The night before. I had started cooking the night before his party, just after midnight, when the house was finally quiet. Everyone else was asleep, my husband snoring softly upstairs, my son locked in his room with his headphones on, laughing at something on his phone. I tied my hair back, rolled up my sleeves, and laid out the ingredients like a ritual. This party mattered. My son Ayan was turning 25, his first big promotion. His friends from work were coming, important people. Networking, he called it. "Mom, it has to be perfect," he'd said earlier that week. "You know, classy." Classy apparently meant food that tasted like home, but didn't look like it came from one. So I planned everything carefully. Chicken biryani cooked slowly, the way my mother taught me, layer by layer, patience folded into every grain of rice. Kebabs marinated overnight, fresh naan, 3 desserts because one never felt like enough when love was involved. I worked through the night, pausing only to wipe sweat from my forehead or sip cold tea. My feet ached, my back screamed. But every time I thought of stopping, I pictured Ayan smiling proudly, telling his guests, "My mom made this." That thought carried me through dawn. The morning rush. By sunrise, the kitchen smelled like warmth and memory. I barely slept an hour before waking again to decorate, to clean, to make sure the house looked like no one actually lived in it. My husband came downstairs around 10, glanced at the counters full of food and said, "You didn't have to do all this." He said it the way people say you didn't have to when they fully expect you to. I just nodded. By noon, guests started arriving. Young professionals, smart clothes, shiny shoes that avoided the rugs. Everyone smiled politely at me, some with genuine warmth, others with the kind of distant kindness reserved for someone's mother. Ayan looked good, confident, relaxed. He barely glanced at the kitchen. "Mom," he said, adjusting his watch, "can we move the food a little later? People want drinks first." "Of course," I said. "Of course." The joke. The food finally went out around 2. I stood near the doorway watching people take their first bites. I always did that, waiting for reactions, for the tiny nods of approval, the murmured "this is good." Someone asked where the food was from. Before I could answer, Ayan laughed. "Home," he said, "but don't worry, if it's bad we'll feed it to the dogs." It was meant to be funny. I knew that, I truly did. But jokes have weight when they land on tired hearts. I felt my smile freeze, my fingers tightened around the edge of the tray I was holding. No one noticed, not really. They laughed and moved on, already scrolling, already chewing. Ayan didn't look at me. Not once. The breaking point. I slipped back into the kitchen. The room was quiet now. Empty except for the hum of the refrigerator and the trays of food I had made with hands that suddenly felt very old. I stared at the biryani, the kebabs, the desserts. I thought of my mother, long gone, standing exactly where I was now, cooking for us, never once hearing a thank you. I thought of every time I had told myself, this is just how it is. And for the first time in decades, I asked myself a dangerous question. What if it doesn't have to be? So I did something I'd never done before. I packed the food. All of it. Carefully, quietly. I didn't slam doors, I didn't cry, I didn't announce anything. I simply placed the dishes into containers, wiped the counters clean, and carried everything out the back door. My hands were steady. My heart was not. I drove to the community shelter 10 minutes away, the one I passed every week but never entered because I was always too busy. The volunteers looked surprised when I walked in with arms full of food. "We have a party," I said. "I thought you might like some help." They smiled like they meant it. The aftermath. When I returned home 2 hours later, the party was chaos. People hovered awkwardly around empty tables, someone whispered, someone else looked embarrassed. Ian stormed into the kitchen when he saw me. "Mom, where's the food?" I met his eyes. "Gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "I gave it away." His face flushed. "You what? Do you know how humiliating this is?" I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said, "I do." For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. The conversation that followed. That night, after everyone left, after the house finally returned to silence, Ian sat across from me at the table. He looked younger somehow, less sure. "I was joking," he said. "I know," I replied. "Then why?" "Because jokes still tell the truth," I said gently. "And tonight your joke told me how little you thought about what I gave." He stared at his hands. "I didn't mean it like that." "I know," I said again, "but meaning isn't the same as impact." He swallowed. "I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect. But it was real. The change. Things didn't magically transform overnight. But something shifted." Ian started saying thank you, actually saying it, not rushing past it, not assuming it. My husband started helping without being asked. And I started doing something radical. I rested. I cooked when I wanted to. I helped when I felt respected. And when I didn't apologize for stepping back. The moral. Love should never be treated as disposable, especially when it comes from someone who gives it freely. Care, effort, and sacrifice deserve acknowledgement, not jokes at their expense. The moment we learn to respect the people who quietly hold our lives together is the moment we truly grow up. Because the ones who cook, clean, and care aren't invisible. They're just waiting to be seen.